So, just wait for him to be this.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take a picture myself. Yeah. Minus 5 points for you. If you are a student, you know the picture, it means you're not here. You can have a selfie vote. All right. Without any further delay, okay, I got all that notes right here, so I don't make a mistake. It's an honor actually to have somebody from MIT here with us, as you can see. And Dr. Michael Nelson, who works on internet and related global policy, public policy issues for Cloudflare. You guys know what Cloudflare is? All right, good. It's gonna probably explain it. All right. It's a startup that has improved the performance and security of more than 2 million websites worldwide. Furthermore, prior to joining Cloudflare earlier this year, he was a principal technology policy strategist at Microsoft Technology Policy Group. And before that, he was a senior technology and telecommunication analyst at Bloomberg Government. All right, that's it, right? All right. In addition, since January 2009, Dr. Nelson has been teaching courses, doing research on the future of the internet and cyber policy at Georgetown University. Prior to joining the Georgetown faculty, Dr. Nelson worked for almost 10 years at IBM. You guys know what IBM is, right? Good, just checking. He started his career in Washington, D.C., working for Senator Gore, then chairman of the Senate Subcommittee of Science, Technology, and Space. After 5 years on Capitol Hill, he moved to the White House and worked with Vice President Gore and the President's science advisor on issues relating telecommunication policy, cybersecurity, encryption, electronic commerce, and information policy. Dr. Nelson has a BS from Caltech and a PhD from MIT. It's an honor to have you here, sir. The floor is all yours.
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate you setting this up, Demetrius. And we're now webcasting, right?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
We are.
So we have,
Yes, we are.
great. Okay, so I guess people can tweet questions if they want. How many people use Twitter? Okay, so that's the most important thing I'm going to share with you today is my Twitter handle. I have lots of different jobs. You just mentioned two of them. One of them is teaching at Georgetown. I also have been working at Cloudflare since the start of the year. And the most important is my Twitter handle. I was very early. I got my own name on Twitter. So Mike Nelson, if you want to get my attention, send me a tweet at Mike Nelson. And I'll follow you, you follow me. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about where I've come from. He's given you the short introduction and share some lessons about what I've learned in my career in the technology field. How many of you are thinking you'll go into a technology field, something related to technology? Okay. All of you are actually going to go into a technology field, whether you know it or not. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how to make the best use of the technologies that are available today and how to get ready for the technologies in the future. I've had an amazingly lucky career. I've just fallen into some of the dream jobs. I got to work with Vice President Gore back when the internet was young. Less than 1 million people were using it back when we got to the White House in 1993. And I've watched the internet grow up. I've worked with some of the companies that were right in the middle of making the internet happen, IBM and Microsoft. And now with Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a small company. It's about 200 people. When I joined in January, it was 130 people. And we are managing 5% of all the world's web traffic, which is pretty impressive for 200 people. So I've been a professor for 7 years. What do professors do? They give you a framework to think about a topic. They tell stories. They assign reading. They assign term papers, and they give grades. Well, I'm not going to do the last two today, but I am going to give you a lot of stories, things that I hope you'll be able to remember as you try to understand the technological changes that are happening. I've been teaching at Georgetown for about 7 years. I teach classes on internet studies. So how is the internet developing? How are people changing the internet? How are people using the internet? My favorite class is called How to Predict the Futures. Teaching my students how to develop scenario planning exercises, how to get ready for all the things that are coming. And I also teach a class on innovation. So I'm going to share some of the things that I teach in that class right here tonight. So in 1 hour, you're going to get the highlights from a $6,000 course that takes a whole semester for free. So say thank you to this guy.
That's okay.
But first, no test though, no test. But the first thing I'm going to do is describe some of the technologies. What's different? As I said, I've been working on internet technology for 25 years, and I got to see the web develop. I got to see Wi-Fi and the mobile internet develop. Right now, we have more exciting technologies than we've ever had before, and more people are able to access them for very low cost. So that's what's really exciting now, and I'll cover that. And then I'll talk about how this is going to evolve and what you and the companies you may work for can do with these technologies. So first off, we've all heard of big data. This was a term that was popularized about 5 years ago. The Economist magazine did one of the very first articles on it called The Data Deluge. And two friends of mine wrote this book called The Big Data, a revolution that will transform the way we live, work, and think. It's about 2 years old. It's still the best book, the best single book on big data, describing how people are taking advantage of the new tools for processing the immense amount of data that we're all generating every day, every month. This is from an article I did for Bloomberg 2 years ago, and it shows how often people are talking about big data around the world. So 2010, that's when the first articles were written. By 2012, this is from Google. They actually, you can look at Google to find out who's searching for particular terms. By 2012, the number of people talking about big data was 100 times larger. And the countries talking about it range from India to Australia, the US, England. Again, this is an example of big data at work. You can actually see where people are excited about a given topic. The reason people are excited about big data, there's three of them. The first, we've got a lot more big data. So 2010, we had 2 trillion bytes of data being produced every year. 2 years later, almost twice as much. This year, it's doubled from 2012. But that's not anything compared to what's going to happen in the next 5 years. The estimate is that we're going to go from 7 trillion bytes of data to 40. More than 5 times increase in 5 years. Just this huge flood of data. Where's it coming from? Well, this is what you need to learn if you want to talk like a data scientist. In America, the coolest job now is to be a data scientist. For some people, that means you know statistics. Other people, it means you know how to program. Other people, it means you know how to use these words, right? So we used to talk about gigabytes and think that was big, and then terabytes. Well, now we're talking about exabytes and zettabytes. So this is a million, billion. Oops. I forgot about that.
How do you sync it?
And this is where the data comes from. This is from Cisco. It gives an example of where the data is being generated. The biggest thing, of course, is video, and that bar is growing faster than anything else. This is in petabytes per month. File sharing music and movies, and just plain old email and databases is also a major component of this. So we're generating this data constantly, cell phones, computers, cameras. And the exciting thing about this data is we can put it together in a lot of new ways. So we can take the images on Facebook, combine that with Twitter updates, weave that together with Google searches. You can even have sensors in rooms like this. So in the future, you'll have sensors on the lights, you'll have sensors for the thermostat. All that data can be combined together to understand what people are doing, how they're doing it, and in the end, make lives better for all of us if we can come up with some creative ways to take the data and provide better services to more people more cheaply. The other reason people are so excited about big data is because now we have the tools to play with big data. 10 years ago, we had lots of data, but it cost thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to get the tools to actually do something with that data. So big data was something big companies did and big governments. Now these tools are free. We can go online, we can take data sets, we can analyze them, plot the graph of the data, look at it in 3 dimensions, even visualize it in new ways. We also have the Internet of Things. We have the ability to combine data from sensors in cars, in your cell phone, and the new revolution is the small little 2-cent, 5-cent sensors that might be in your clothing, might be in the sidewalk, might be just part of our everyday life. In the future, with the Internet of Things, we're going to have 50, maybe 100 devices in our life that we interact with every day that connect to the internet. We're going to have some control over that, but we're not going to like it. But that's going to give us more ways to get better services, to be safer, save money, to be more productive. And the other big difference is the cloud. So with the cloud, you've heard about cloud computing. Rather than doing everything on your computer, now you have your data and your software living on data centers around the world. Our company has 69 data centers around the world. And that network of data centers is what provides our service. We don't have to put any software on your machine to run our service. You just go on the internet and we're there. But it's not just computers, it's cameras, it's light bulbs, it's pets. You can track your pet now online. We also have pervasive broadband wireless. That's spreading, not just Wi-Fi, but cellular networks. We have these tools I was talking about. And we have machine learning. How many people have studied machine learning or aware of the term? Machine learning is when we take this big data and with computer programs, develop ways to make sense of the data, to train the software, so that perhaps you look at an e-commerce site and you can use machine learning software, algorithms and statistics to take that data about who's buying what and learn what products different types of people want, learn how to provide them with customized catalogs, give them special coupons, individualized coupons, and then get in a learning cycle. So more data gives you more insight into what customers are doing, gives you more ways to market your products, more money, more software, more customized advertising. And again, it's a tool that used to be something only the real experts could handle. Now this is something more and more companies, big companies and small companies, are able to take advantage of. And the last thing that's helped move this along is that governments are making some of their data available. So map data, data about citizens. One of the things that's quite popular in our country is making data about crime available. So you can see where crime is happening so people can be more aware of where they need to be careful and what kind of crime is happening in different places. This is actually saving lives in some cases. But it's weather data, it's traffic data, it's economic data that can be used, real estate data. All of this can be used to give new tools to more people. So all that together is something I call Cloud Plus. I have a rule about buzzwords, little phrases. You only get 3 or 4 syllables. So Cloud Plus is something that can fit in a headline. People can remember that. We used to call it application service provision. No, Cloud Plus. Okay, but the real reason big data is so important, the real reason this is so exciting, because people want it. You probably wonder why I have a list of movies on the screen here. These are the 7 most popular movies in the United States in 2012. We've got Batman, Hunger Games, James Bond, The Hobbit, The Avengers. What do all of those have in common? Exactly, they're all superheroes. People like superheroes. More important, people want to be superheroes. And what we're doing with big data is giving the people the power to be superheroes. So, one example. This is the Batcave from Batman. Batman and Robin have the ability to see what's going on in the city, to get big data, process it, and understand where the threats are, where the traffic is. We can do that now. We have data from sensors, data from satellites. We have Google Street View. Petabytes of data that allow people to understand what's happening around them in real time. That's not fantasy anymore. How many people use Foursquare? Is that commonly used here in Cyprus? Foursquare is an app that lets you check in when you visit a restaurant or a store and tell people, hey, I'm here. If your friends are on Foursquare, they can say, hey, Mike's at this restaurant. Maybe I'll stop by and say hello, or coffee, whatever. You know, it's a way to build community, but it also generates a huge amount of data. So if you're trying to figure out where to open a new store in New York City or Washington, D.C. or Chicago or a small town in Europe, you can use Foursquare to see where the people are, see where your potential customers are. X-ray vision. Has anyone tried the Oculus Rift? So I see the geeks are here. Good. Tell your friends about the Oculus Rift. It's a virtual reality, very cheap. It's about $300. And you have these 2 screens, one for each eye, that give you 3-dimensional imagery and lets you go into a fantasy world, go into a virtual world and ride amusement rides, go flying through the sky, be a helicopter pilot, you know, whatever you wish. Only the software limits you. This is now being combined. Oh, sorry. This is being combined with real world imagery. So in some cases, you just have one eye. You see the real world with your right eye. You see a screen showing you information about the real world. Google Glass was an early attempt to do this, but we're getting better and better. Jet engine mechanics have a very tough job. They've got to fix one of the most complicated devices known to man, and they've got to do it very quickly because if an airplane is out of service, that's very expensive. So they can carry around entire bookshelves of information on how to fix the jet aircraft and see it right in front of their eye as they're fixing the turbines in the jet engine. So it's augmented reality. Real-time prediction. And here we combine big data with predictive analytics. This is often developed through machine learning. We run through lots of different cases. We see what happens when, for instance, there's a traffic jam or an accident on a particular highway. That allows us to determine what happens when there's a major accident on a given highway. Where does the traffic go? And in the future, we can predict how best to move traffic off of the highway and get people to where they need to go. Very, very simple example, but this can be used for planning for major events. It can be used for weather problems. There's a lot of different ways in which this predictive analytics is going to save lives, save money, save time. Another thing people like to have is a super sidekick. You know, Batman has Robin. Every superhero, almost every superhero, has a sidekick. And now we have sidekicks. Most of them look like cell phones. We have the ability just to start asking questions, getting these answers, getting the backup that we need. Even better is to have a team of sidekicks. Most of you, I know you're the age of many of my students, you don't do things by yourself anymore, right? You have a paper to do, you reach out to your friends. You can use social media, you can use emails the old way, that's the way I did it, but you can reach out instantly, even at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're really stuck, and just ask 20 friends, 2 of whom probably know the answer. That's, again, the idea of having a team of sidekicks able to help you out. And then we have what I think is the most exciting thing of all, which is having a team of everyone, a team of sidekicks. This is a picture of a convention of people dressed up as superheroes. You might not be able to see that. This is even more interesting. How many people watch TED Talks? How many people have been to TED Talk? I know TED Limassol just happened a few months ago. On Saturday, I was at TEDx University of Nicosia. Were you there? It was amazing. I was really impressed. This is from a TED Talk in 2011. Ed Whitaker is a composer, and he decided to write a piece of choral music for a chorus of 1,000 people. And what he did was he made the music available and invited singers all around the world to sing one part of the harmony of his chorus on a Skype video. So he recorded thousands of these videos, picked out the best ones, and then he combined them. And what that picture is an image of hundreds of television screens, one for each singer. And he combined all this music together into one of the most dramatic performances I've ever heard. A virtual choir. It's an exceptionally powerful example of how online collaboration can work and how we can have a team of everyone. So, put all those things together, what do? Well, the first thing we can do is we can energize the startup economy. How many of you figure you're going to start up a company at some point or work for a startup? Right. Again, I think all of you are probably going to do that. When I started my career 30 years ago, that wasn't something people did. You worked for government or you worked for a well-established company. Now, most of us at some point in our life will probably be part of a startup. And the Startup Book 1 is a really outstanding book written by the CEO of LinkedIn. How many of you are on LinkedIn? Okay, there's 2 of you who aren't. Get on LinkedIn and link to me. I'll help you out. This is what I do for a lot of my students, frankly. I'm happy to link to you and link you to other interesting people around the world. That's the first thing that you do if you're a Startup Book 1. Find other interesting people to learn from, to help you find the right talent. Of course, the sharing economy is another part of this new revolution. Uber is the big, exciting service that provides like taxi service, but It's a taxi service without taxi drivers, because ordinary people are driving people whenever they want, using the web app and the cell phone app to find their customers. And then perhaps the most exciting change is here on the right, the base of the economy, helping the poorest people around the world plug into the world economy. And all of us have other ways to interact with the world economy. If you're in some of the remote corners of the world and you're not very wealthy, being able to go to an internet cafe once a week can give you things you could never have any other way. And provide services that, again, save lives, radically improve the quality of life. There's an example from India where a little fishing village got one cell phone 10 years ago. Until that, they had no cell phone. That cell phone allowed every fisherman in the village to find out the real price of fish in the neighboring port, where they used to take all of their fish. By getting that information, they doubled the income of the entire village, just by getting that one number every day. Because then they could decide, do I go to that port where the price is good, or to go to that port where the price is much better? Just a little bit of information can make all the difference. So with the cloud, we're going to reduce the cost of computing, reduce the cost of storing data, dramatically reduce the cost of maintaining systems. We're going to help people work together, help people find information, and we're going to enable people to get involved outside of the regular job. I usually have 2 or 3 jobs at once. I mentioned that I work for Cloudflare, also teach at Georgetown. I'm also very involved in the Internet Society, which is a group that's promoting the growth of the internet around the world. Having 2 or 3 jobs at once is really critical because it builds that network, builds your skills, and helps you learn about the things you need to learn to stay at the leading edge, developing new services, new technologies. So the end result, more innovation in more places, people working together, and over time, a more prosperous society. All because we're making data easier to get, we're getting easier to find talent, we're making it much easier to work together, we're reducing the cost of doing international trade, and we're helping companies enter markets that they could never enter before. 20 years ago, it was very hard to compete with a phone company. They owned the wires, they had the licenses to operate. Well, now we have companies like WhatsApp that are providing telecommunications around the world. Our company is a good example. We just celebrated our 5th birthday. When I joined in January, we had 135 people. Now we have 50% more. We have 210 people. We're managing 5% of all the world's web traffic. Every day, billions of requests go to connect to websites, and we're routing that traffic through our data centers. And we're making the web more efficient, more reliable, and far safer by doing that. And in most cases, we're doing it for free. Our basic service is free. We're also using the cloud. And this is the most important part. We're using the cloud to do all the things that we don't want to do. We have 200 people doing the work of 2,000 people because all the bookkeeping is done by somebody else, or we use special cloud-based tools. We have all these tools that allow us to minimize the amount of computing systems we have to run. I mean, it's really quite efficient. And this is a nice list of all the ways in which this technology is changing the world. The world's largest taxi cab company doesn't own any taxis. It's called Uber. The largest hotel company is Airbnb, but they don't own any hotels. They just help people find apartments and extra rooms that they can stay in. The largest phone company doesn't own any wires. Skype just runs on the existing infrastructure. Same thing with the largest store. It's Alibaba, the Chinese version of Amazon. Facebook, the most popular media service. More than 1 billion people use Facebook every day. No other media company reaches that many people. And you can go down the list. The largest movie company doesn't own a cinema, doesn't own a theater. And Apple and Google don't make apps. They let people build apps on their infrastructure. So that's how radical the change has been. Lots of new people, lots of new models for thinking about this. These are just some of the terms that economists have come up with. The sharing economy, caring economy. But the problem is culture and attitude. There's a lot of people who are still very pessimistic about this future. 2 years ago in my paper, in the hometown paper, Washington Post, there was an article called, "Why is it cool to hate the internet?" We have all these articles about how the internet is stealing our privacy, it's distracting our children, it's destroying jobs. There's a long list of things that technology is supposedly doing. This is my favorite one. This is the MIT Technology Review magazine. That is Buzz Aldrin. He was one of the 3 astronauts on Apollo 11. And it says, "You promised me moon colonies, instead I got Facebook." And again, he's not seeing what's really happening. He's seeing the social media. He's not seeing how these technologies are changing the way businesses work. So we need optimists. These are 4 of my favorite optimistic books. If you need some more reading, I know a lot of you are students, but Future Perfect is a book about technology and how it's developing and how fast it's developing. Abundance is a great book. The subtitle is "The Future is Better Than You Think." Again, these are books that take our technologies today and extrapolate into the future. So we can take these technologies, but we have to know how to use them. So one thing that's happening in the States and elsewhere are these open collaboration spaces. I don't have an office in Washington. I share an office with 50 other startups. We have something called WeWork. You probably have this here as well, that small companies can start up in a shared space. Sometimes universities are providing these spaces. Things like what we're doing here, broadcasting to a wider audience, doing webcasts, allowing you to reach across time zones to find the best people. Our company is a totally global company, and we found lots of our employees through that technique. Giving seminars, finding people who are excited about what Cloudflare does and have the talent to contribute. This is the other thing that's really important. Being ready to partner and being transparent about what you're doing. If you want to have good partners who trust you, if you want to get people excited about what you're doing, tell people what you're doing. Just the opposite of what people did 20 years ago, where if you had a good idea, kept it secret, don't tell anybody what you're doing. Now, the assumption is people will find out what you're doing. So your goal is to move faster than anybody else can move. By telling the world what you're doing and getting the best people to come to you, either as employees or as advisors or partners, and help you do it. And then the last issue that really matters is having smart government policy. So governments have to be on the side of innovation. And that can mean making sure there's effective broadband. It can mean having strong investment in the future. Many of you students are the future. And I'm glad to hear that Cyprus is making some of those investments. And then having good policy on patents and copyright. That's what it takes to be an innovative nation. Just mentioned about some of this. I have an article I wrote a few years back called 6 Myths of Innovation Policy, about the difference between the United States and Europe. in terms of what they're doing to foster innovation and what can be done more in both countries to learn from each other and to encourage the kind of risk-taking that's needed to make things work. Another thing that really helps is having political leaders that believe in innovation. When I was in the White House in the Clinton years, I worked very closely with Vice President Gore. This was one of his top 3 initiatives, making innovation and the internet happen. And he talked about it a lot. And that helped spur investment. It helped fix a lot of policies that were standing in the way of the internet and innovation and big data. So having political leadership really helps. And this is the last page. I will share these slides with you, and so you can put this up. But here are some articles that I mentioned earlier, a couple other things that I found helpful over the years. John Hagel, John Hagel, is a particularly important thinker in this area. He also is a very prolific tweeter, but every tweet he reads, I read, because he's always got some new ideas, new ways to think about how the technology is changing companies. And I mentioned a couple of times this book on big data, which is, again, sort of a comprehensive view of what's happening. I promised not to lecture, and I went and lectured. So now I have time for questions. I hope you have some questions. I've given you a lot in a very short time. I'm very happy to talk a little bit about my career as well. I know a lot of you are going to be thinking a lot about career and the next job. The first piece of advice I would give you is to stop talking about a career. You're going to have 5 different careers, and you're going to have 15 different jobs. And you're going to have to change. You saw my career path. I've changed from PhD researcher to political policy advisor, to MIT executive and manager, professor, and now doing 5 jobs at once all around the world. I was describing earlier my travel schedule since September has included Brussels, Berlin, Warsaw, Rome, Ankara, Brazil, San Francisco twice, and Paris next week, followed by China. That's 3 months, okay? Now, the internet was supposed to reduce travel, but the internet is global, and I'm working with governments around the world on helping them understand some of these changes. Because these are big changes, and we need to change education, we need to change telecommunications policy, we need to change how government works. There's a lot of change that has to happen, and you guys can be part of that. Many of you are more adept at these technologies than people with 30 more years of experience. So you have a big advantage. How many people have heard of Don Tapscott? He's a Canadian internet guru. He talks about the internet, the generation lap. We used to talk about the generation gap. The generation lap is what happens when the younger generation has run a lap around the track faster than the older generation. So that's what's happened here. And you guys can be on top of this technology. You can use it in new creative ways. Cloudflare is run by a CEO who's in his 30s. And our co-founder, Michelle, is also in her 30s. They built this company in 5 years because they're able to move fast and able to think of new ways to do things. Any questions? Careers, future, next steps?
Difficulties maybe would be a good subject to talk about. Like, how to overcome certain difficulties that the young people entering the market, for them to open like the perspectives, see what's going on in the world, because we live in an environment, but a lot of them have the opportunity maybe to go beyond.
Yeah.
I think it would be a good thing to talk about this obstacles.
There's a great book called Free Work. It was written by a student who graduated from one of the best universities in the United States 5 years ago. What happened in the United States 5 years ago? no jobs. I was teaching at the time, and my students were just, they couldn't find a job. There was nothing happening. And this guy had the same problem. The only jobs he could find were unfunded, temporary, 2-month, 3-month jobs. And people told him, said, work for 3 months, done. That's it. So he said, if I'm going to work for free, I'm going to have the best job in the world. And so he thought really hard, okay, what's the best job in the world? What are the 4 best jobs in the world? What are the 4 things I want to do with my life? And who are the 4 people I want as my boss? And he thought about it, and he thought, well, what can I do? And who do I want to work with? And so he wrote a job description. And he sent it to the 4 people he wanted to work for. Now, he knew how to do some web design work. He'd taken some classes in video editing. And so he wrote a letter to Bono. He said, I want to work for you. And I noticed that your website could be a lot better if you did this, and I can do that for you for free. And you don't have to pay me. I don't have to come to you. You don't have to give me an office. I can sit here and I can fix your website. And he did this for 3 other people that he really admired. And he assumed there was a little chance that one person would say yes. Well, 2 of them said yes. And so he did the work. It took 2 or 3 months. He really impressed his bosses. And he had 2 job offers. And he had the experience of working for 2 of the best people in the world, doing exactly what he likes to do. And the book's called Free Work. And if you can't find it, send me an email or a tweet. That's the opportunity. You can be the startup of one. You can define your own job. And it doesn't have to be here in Cyprus. Now, you have to do this pretty quick because pretty soon everybody's going to try to do this. But the other thing is using social media. How many people tweet or post on Facebook every day? Okay, pretty close. Okay, every week? Okay, good, good. Every day is a good goal. Why is this important? First, because if you're doing this, then your friends are part of your community. You're learning from your friends. On Twitter, you're also probably learning from some of the smartest people in the world. If you pick your friends carefully, the people you follow on Twitter, you can get this incredible filtered source of information on your screen delivered to you instantly for free, and it's very concise, right? Very concise. That's what I've done. I've picked out the 200 or 300 smartest people I know, and I follow them. John Hagel, one of the people I follow, but Tim O'Reilly, Tim Berners-Lee, Ben Cerf, people who made the web and the internet work. And every day they share 1 or 2 things that I wouldn't learn any other way. But the other reason to tweet, or the other reason you should put in to Twitter and Facebook, is because that reminds people in your community of what you're thinking about and what you can do. That's how I got my jobs at Bloomberg and at Microsoft. I had great jobs, but I was out there sharing what I knew with friends. And when they heard about a job, they thought, oh, Mike Nelson would really be good on this job. And the fact that you're tweeting every day means that your friends who care about you and friends of your friends who may not care about you but should, they see you every day. So it's a great opportunity. And I know a number of friends who have found their opportunities out. It's even more important for you here in a place like Cyprus, where you need to connect to the world. You need to use all those friends of friends who can help you. How many people, any stories, any of you who have stories about using social media in unexpected ways? Not just to find the next party on Friday night. I mean, that's important. That's really important. Any other stories?
Like the extra story is actually, I did develop like an ESP course, like a teaching English for specific purpose engineering. I don't know anything about civil engineering. So the only way to find something was to watch National Geographic,
Right.
Discovery Channel. And I started looking for different associations, like civil engineers associations around the world. So I contacted them on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
They started giving me advice what to use or not to use in my court. It was kind of cool to do that. So you got actually in contact with people outside your circle.
Right.
And I used Facebook. It was the first time I used Facebook as a tool in order to harness information.
Mm-hmm.
It was a different thing.
I taught a class on e-government, and I was struggling as I developed a list of reading to find a good book on failures of e-government. Now, there's lots of reports about successes. Everybody wants to boast about something that worked, even if it didn't really work. But nobody wants to analyze failures. And so I put a note out on Facebook I have 3,500 friends on Facebook. And I just said, anybody know about a book on failures in e-government? And one friend who lives in Fiji said, I think I saw a book from either New Zealand or Australia about failures in e-government. And then another friend who lives in London saw that and said, oh, I remember that book. It's by a woman from New Zealand about failures in Australia. And here's the book, which I never would have found. It was not even available on Amazon in the US. I had to buy it from the UK Amazon site. And it was exactly what I needed. But it took a global collaboration of my friends to find that book. And it's just, that's the kind of really high quality information you can get if you ask. You just have to ask. Did you have a question?
Yeah, no, because I run a e-commerce site, specializing in activities, and I'm a blogger that way. I mean, it's just amazing because I contacted a lot of specialists in the field, and I saw that one of them, that was their thing, and blogging about disabilities. And when I contacted them, they were more than willing to help out. And just for free, like that's really right for us. For me, they contributed big time on the site, and they generated a lot of traffic for me, for my behalf.
Win-win, win-win. You're helping them, they're helping you. Yeah. Well, that's what's so exciting for me. I've always tried to find technologies that increase the pie for everyone, right? You know, I grew up on the West Coast in Seattle, and I went to school at MIT on the East Coast. And the contrast with it's partly the West, you know, everybody moved west and there was more for everyone. And in the East, it's 200 years, 300 years of people kind of arguing over what they get. And this technology changes the mindset. Everybody can have more if we share and if we team up.
Actually, Quora too. Quora is an amazing site for
Yeah,
specialists.
yeah.
And I find a lot of amazing information. It's literally perfect question, and they want more time for it. To
Quora. How many people have used it? You know?
Discovered that.
Yeah.
I started using it, I started looking into it because I'd be surprised if you can find a lot of information and content with people. I think it's like perception of certain e-tools, like, like younger people will look at certain e-tools and they look at them, the perception of it is like a toy.
Yeah.
And eventually when you get older, like you get into business, you start like, transforming your mind in a way that you look at it as not a toy, but actually a tool. That's like an issue that a lot of young people have. They don't see that as a tool. They see it more like a toy. Find the next parties or or a picture.
Well, I use Facebook a little bit like a toy. You know, it's more my community. It's emotional support. You know, when something really great happens, or I take a really interesting photo, I put something there. Last week, my wallet was stolen in Brazil by the hotel clerk. So, I got a lot of sympathy from people. But Twitter, that's where I go for the information, and LinkedIn is where I go for the advice and the talent. And those three together are incredibly powerful. Other questions? A couple of you said you were going to start a business. You want to share with us what kind of business you're thinking of, or what kind of projects you're working on?
So some of the idea of it, I wanted to finish it. So it's a career path. not easier.
Yep.
Something like this in USA for when I search the master, do an application, com- com- collaborate with a lot of schools and universities in USA.
Mhm.
But I do something similar in Europe. Yeah,
Well, you know, there's a huge opportunity for you.
education field, yeah. Because it's in cybersecurity nowadays, I read an article about China, I think,
Mhm.
they teaching coding in primary schools. While Cyprus, it's only offered in universities, not even high school.
Well, in the United States, we also have been very slow to teach computer science and programming, even in high school. It's really it's strange that we would wait. So there's now something called the Hour of Code. Have people heard about code.org? You have kids, right? So, Demetrius, have you tried Hour of Code? CODE.org. And it's this really fun game that teaches kids and adults the basics of programming. A Microsoft vice president quit his job at Microsoft because he wanted to work full-time on this. It had been a side job, and he decided this was a life mission. He has now taught 20 million people how to code in an hour. It's not sophisticated coding, but it gets people into it, and it points them to tools that they can use to do different types of coding. It's just that first barrier, right? It's just getting involved. It's, I love these stories, the people who give their life to something.
It's also like a culture thing, like in the United States and many other Western countries, you know, like you go to Germany, people are willing to change careers.
Yes.
And risking. I cannot imagine having like a good job and quit my job. I think my mother would hang herself, you know, would jump up and start crying. Oh my God, you're like this great job and suddenly you quit it.
My parents did that 5 times in the last 5 years.
I can see that some of these young students, when they get a good job, say, okay, I have a good job, but I quit. I can see their parents like weeping, you know, like, oh my God. It's just like, don't understand.
That's what this article is about. Let's see, where is it? The article I wrote for European Institute was on the 6 myths of innovation, and that was all about how people think entrepreneurs are really cool until one wants to marry their son or daughter.
Yeah, it's like a musician, you know.
Yeah, but if you don't change jobs, if you don't make the jump now, the good job that you have will almost certainly go away. Either the company will collapse, or your boss will leave, and you'll have a terrible boss, and you'll have a terrible job. You gotta jump.
See, there's a lot of that is missing here, you know, that people of events.
Yeah.
Those events are missing. When I lived in the States in Austin, you know, like Dell.
Yes.
The Dell locked the company, and everybody who arrived at that day was laid off. People lost engineers, everybody lost their jobs there. And then at like the second layoff round, the people were invited to a party, successful people. But everybody who was invited to the party was laid off. People got big slip on it. People don't realize that that's the way things work.
Yeah.
Talk about 2,500 people. And it seems like this didn't happen. They don't know that, you know, once you reach the ceiling, you want to look for another job because it's the end. You're going to get laid off. There's something going to happen to you, one way or the other, or they're going to sell off that department.
Yeah.
Listen, we don't have such big companies in order to see that somehow. I think this experience is missing.
No, it's not going to be missing for long
I know.
because it's changing. I gave the graduation address 2 years ago at the University of Maryland School of Information, and I wrote the speech. They told me I only have 10 minutes, so I wrote this very good speech for the students. And then I read it, and I thought, that's stupid. I need to write a speech for the parents of the students and the friends of the students. And that's when I explained to them how they're going to change jobs all the time. That's why I kind of gave them a strategy to live through all the changes that were coming. because that was the most useful thing I could do in 10 minutes, was to help everyone in the support network, all the friends, had to learn how things were going to be different in this generation than the last generation. One more question?
Yeah,
Please.
as an e-commerce kind of entrepreneur, big data, sorting big data, I'm doing like my filtering and sort of sorting, trying to see things via Google Analytics.
Yes.
Is
Great
there any other kind of software or whatever out there that you can sort of
Google Analytics is really excellent for what you're trying to do, which is understand where people are coming from and how you can better match their needs.
is that going to be the case? What's the future?
Well, obviously we have the new social media tools, and so by using Facebook and some of those platforms, you can understand more deeply what your customers are interested in. And that's what really gets wild, is when people start connecting and realizing, people who like this type of beer also buy this kind of book. And you can start doing some interesting analysis and guiding people more quickly to what they want. But you're on the right track. I mean, Google Analytics does help a lot to help you find out what's attractive. The other thing that we do a lot in our company is what's called A/B testing. You've heard that as well, where you set up two different websites, have slightly different presentation, and you see which one is more successful. Sometimes you do it for two different communities, and that can give you a more useful.
So the hosting company could certainly
So you're working with a hosting company here or somewhere? Okay. Great. Sounds like you're well along.
Yeah.
You can give the next lecture, okay? Okay, one more question. I think I'll.
You talked us about the potential of all those new technologies, but we have everyone here has been seeing the some of the issues that are arising from all this huge data concentration. We've seen that there are several issues impacting governments, companies, or even individuals with handling privacy and massive amounts of data. As a person that has been working in the security of the internet area for so long, how can we counter all these issues with privacy and data laws and all these dangers that they exist?
They do, and I mentioned it quickly. I didn't go into. I have another whole semester on this topic. This is usually the first question, and I'm glad you asked this question, because it is trust is so important. I think part of the problem is we keep talking about privacy, and when people say privacy, their first assumption is, okay, we must restrict how much data is collected. That's the only answer. No, the only answer is transparency. I think we need to have better understanding of what data is being collected. The data is going to be collected. It might be the camera on the street. It might be the computer in my car. It might be my cell phone collecting data. It's not going to stop. But what we need is better transparency, a better understanding of how companies, big and small companies, governments, phone companies are collecting that data, better understanding of how they're securing the data. And this is the big problem. People are not investing enough in security. And then a better understanding of how they're using the data and when they're sharing it with other companies. And that's what concerns me most, is when I trust Facebook, and then I find out that Facebook shared my data with 100 other companies. Now, Facebook's pretty good because you can actually restrict that. You can find out. Facebook will give you a transparency report on your data. And you can check boxes if you spend the time. You do have to spend the time. I call it mutually assured disclosure, or two-way transparency. I'll tell you a lot about me, but you have to tell me what you're doing about the data that I'm giving you. And right now, we don't have that balance. Governments are starting to push more for more transparency, but we have to do more. Some companies are making this part of their business model. They're trying to be more private, more secure than their competitor. Apple is the best example, where they're putting in encryption. They've promised that they're not trying to make money off your data. They're trying to make money off of having great technology, and people will pay more for that because it's great technology and it protects your privacy. Our own company, Cloudflare, collects a huge amount of data. 1.8 billion people go through our data centers every month. Most of the world's internet users touch our data centers. And we throw 99.99% of that data away within seconds because we don't need it. We don't need it to provide our service. We want to know where all the traffic is flowing. We don't want to know where your traffic is flowing and your traffic is flowing. That's not our business model. But we have to make that clear. We have to be very transparent about what we're doing. You know, that's how we can be different than other companies. So keep pushing, you know, and pay attention. I mean, that's what worries me most is people are not paying attention. They click on websites and say, I will forfeit all my data for the rest of my life and I will hand over my firstborn son. Click.
I agree.
I agree, yes. So let's pay attention. Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm happy to stay longer and ask individual questions. Thanks for the great questions and thanks for being a very attentive audience. And I hope you tweet what a great guy this guy is for bringing me here.
Thank you very much. It's an honor having you here.
Thank you.
No.